Cowboy followed Apache into the canyons, and the drumbeat ahead was calling him. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, back to our main character. Cody Harrison had always preferred solitude. Out here in the rugged West, he was more comfortable with his own company than with anyone else. He had built his life on the lonely plains, herding cattle, keeping his distance from the bustling towns and the chaos of civilization. He was the type of man who found peace in the silence of nature, the crunch of boots on dry earth, and the steady rhythm of his horse's hooves against the worn trail. But everything changed the day he followed a trail that led him deep into the canyons, where the wind whispered ancient secrets, and the land seemed to hold its breath. It had all started when Cody had spotted something odd while riding through the open range, footprints in the dust that didn't belong to any settler or cowboy. Curious, he followed them. The tracks led him to the edge of Apache territory, a place he had long avoided. He knew better than to get too close to those lands, but something inside him pushed him forward. The footprints grew more distinct as he entered the narrow canyon, the walls rising like giants around him, casting long shadows in the fading light. It was then that he heard it, a rhythmic sound in the distance, faint but undeniable. The steady beat of drums. At first, he thought it might be the wind or the distant rumble of thunder, but as the sound grew louder, his heart skipped a beat. The drums were calling to him, and it felt as though the very earth beneath him was urging him forward. Cody rode on, the beat of the drums matching the pounding of his heart. The further he went, the more the canyon seemed to close in around him, as if the walls were alive, watching his every move. He had no idea what lay ahead, but he couldn't stop now. The pull of the drums was too strong, too real. As he rounded a bend in the canyon, he saw her. Iona Redfeather, an Apache woman, standing tall and resolute, her dark eyes locking with his as if she had been waiting for him all along. She didn't speak, but her gaze held him, drawing him in like a magnetic force. Behind her, the distant figures of her people began to materialize, warriors emerging from the shadows, their presence both a threat and a promise. The sound of the drums grew louder still, filling the air with a deep, resonant call that seemed to echo in his very bones. Cody had crossed into the unknown, and he had no idea what awaited him on the other side. But one thing was certain, the journey he had started was only just beginning. Cody felt the weight of Iona's gaze as she stood in front of him, her dark eyes unblinking. There was a quiet strength in her presence, something both intimidating and captivating. She was unlike anyone he had ever met before, tall, proud, and unyielding. Her hair, long and dark, cascaded down her back, and her skin was the rich bronze of the land, a stark contrast to his own pale complexion. The beat of the drums seemed to pulse through the air around them, each beat a reminder that he had stepped into a world far beyond his understanding. Cody's heart raced as he dismounted, his boots hitting the ground with a soft thud. The air in the canyon was thick with tension, and for a moment either spoke. Iona didn't move, but Cody felt the pressure of her stare, like she was measuring him, weighing his every action. It was then that he noticed the figures behind her, Apache warriors, standing as still and silent as the stone walls that surrounded them. Their faces were painted with intricate designs, their eyes cold and unreadable. They didn't look at him with hostility, but with something far more unsettling, indifference. He could sense that they were waiting for something, but he didn't know what. Iona finally broke the silence, her voice low and steady, but with an edge that made Cody's skin prickle. "You have come a long way, Cowboy," she said. "But you should have turned back when you had the chance." Cody felt his breath catch in his throat. Her words were not a threat, but a warning. She wasn't angry, just resolute. "I didn't mean to intrude," Cody said, his voice steady but with an underlying tension. "I followed the trail. I heard the drums." Iona's expression didn't change, but her eyes softened just a little. "The drums are not meant for you," she said. "They are for those who understand the land, the people, and the ways of our ancestors. You are an outsider, a stranger to these lands. Yet you have come here." Cody felt the weight of her words settle on his chest, and for the first time since he had ridden into the canyon, he wondered if he had made a mistake. But he couldn't turn back now. He had already come too far. "I came because I need to understand," Cody said, his voice quiet. "I need to know what it is that you're protecting, what the land means to you." Ayana regarded him for a moment, then stepped forward, her gaze never leaving his. "You seek knowledge, but knowledge comes at a cost. Are you willing to pay it?" Cody nodded, though he wasn't entirely sure what she meant. The drums continued to beat, a rhythmic sound that seemed to draw him deeper into the canyon, deeper into the heart of the Apache world. Ayana turned and gestured for him to follow. "Come," she said, her voice calm but with an underlying command. "I will show you." As they moved through the canyon, the warriors followed at a distance, their presence like a shadow that loomed over Cody, a constant reminder that he was not in control. The walls of the canyon closed in around them, narrowing as they traveled further. The air grew cooler, the scent of earth and stone filling Cody's nostrils. It felt ancient here, as if the land itself held secrets that had been buried for centuries. As they walked, Ayana spoke of her people, of the history that had shaped them and the struggles they faced to survive. She spoke of the land as if it were a living, breathing entity, something to be respected, something that could never be tamed. Cody listened, absorbing every word, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into something much larger than he had ever imagined. They reached a clearing, and in the center stood an altar of sorts, stones piled high, with offerings laid at its base. Ayana stopped and turned to him. "This is where the drums call," she said. "This is where we listen to the voices of our ancestors. The land speaks here, and those who listen can hear its wisdom." Cody stared at the altar, feeling a strange pull in his chest. He didn't understand it, but something about the place felt right. As if it had been waiting for him. "I didn't come here to take," Cody said, his voice low. "I came to learn." Ayana nodded, her expression unreadable. "Then listen," she said softly. "And when you are ready, you will hear what the land has to say." The drums continued to beat, and for the first time, Cody felt like he was truly listening. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain: his journey had only just begun. Cody stood still, the weight of Ayana's words hanging in the air. The drums were quieter now, but their rhythm still pulsed in his chest, a steady reminder of the path he had chosen. He gazed at the altar before him, the stones arranged with care, as if they too were waiting for something, waiting for him. Ayana stood beside him, her presence both calming and commanding. She didn't speak, but her silence was a message in itself. This was his moment. Cody stepped forward, his boots crunching against the dry earth. He reached out and placed his hand on the stones, feeling the coolness of the rock beneath his fingertips. The touch sent a jolt through him, as if the land itself had recognized his presence. He closed his eyes, letting the stillness of the canyon surround him. For the first time since he had arrived, he felt a connection to something greater than himself. The wind stirred, and in that moment, it felt as though the canyon itself was whispering to him, telling him its secrets. The voices of the past seemed to echo around him, soft and distant, yet clear. Cody inhaled deeply, trying to absorb the wisdom the land was offering. He felt the weight of history pressing down on him, the struggles and triumphs of the Apache people woven into the very ground beneath his feet. He thought of his own life, his years of isolation, the miles of empty land he had wandered, and the emptiness he had carried inside him. Had it all led to this moment? Had he been meant to find this place, to meet Ayana and hear the call of the drums? The sound of the drums seemed to grow louder, not in volume, but in meaning. They were no longer just a rhythmic beat in the distance. They were a call to something deeper. Ayana's voice broke through his thoughts, soft but firm. "The land speaks, Cody. But only those who truly listen can hear its message." He turned to her, meeting her gaze. Her expression was calm, but there was a flicker of something else in her eyes, an understanding, as if she knew exactly what he was feeling. "What is it saying?" Cody asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ayana didn't answer right away. She took a step closer to him, her presence steady and grounding. She gestured to the altar, to the stones, to the land around them. "It is saying that you are here for a reason," she said. "That the past has brought you to this place, and the future will shape you in ways you cannot yet understand." Cody looked at her, confused. "I don't understand," he said. "I don't know why I'm here." Ayana's lips curled into a faint smile. "You are here because the land has chosen you," she said. "You are here because you have a role to play, just as the Apache do. You are part of something larger, something that stretches beyond time and place." Cody shook his head, still unsure. "I'm just a cowboy. I don't belong here." Ayana's eyes softened, and for a moment, Cody could see the weight of her people's history in her gaze. "We are all part of something bigger than ourselves," she said. "Even you, Cody. Even the ones who think they are lost." The wind shifted, and the sound of the drums seemed to echo through the canyon, louder now, as if in agreement. Ayana turned and motioned for him to follow. "Come," she said. "The journey has only just begun." As they walked deeper into the canyon, the air grew cooler, and the sounds of the drums seemed to guide them, leading them into the heart of the Apache world. Cody felt a sense of purpose beginning to take root inside him, a sense of belonging he had never felt before. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, he wasn't afraid to find out. Cody followed Ayana deeper into the canyon, the air growing cooler as they descended further. The rhythm of the drums continued to echo in the distance, as if calling him to something he didn't fully understand. Each step he took felt heavier, but not out of burden. It was as though the land itself was inviting him to embrace it, to become part of it. The walls of the canyon rose steeply around them, their rough surfaces etched with time. Cody couldn't help but marvel at the ancient beauty of this place. The silence between him and Ayana was comfortable, yet there was an unspoken tension, like two worlds slowly beginning to converge. They reached a small clearing where the trees were sparse, and the ground was dotted with patches of wildflowers. Ayana stopped and turned to face him, her dark eyes reflecting a quiet strength. "This is where it begins," she said softly. Cody looked around, not sure what she meant. "Where what begins?" he asked, his voice a little unsure. Ayana stepped forward, her gaze steady. "Where your understanding begins," she said. "Where the land will speak to you, if you are ready to listen." She gestured to the space around them. "This is where we honor the earth, the sky, and the ancestors who have come before us. Here, we listen to what the land has to say. And here you will find your own path." Cody looked down at the ground, feeling an odd pull, as if something within him was stirring. He had always been a man of action, a man who trusted his instincts, but there was something different about this place. It was as if the very air around him had a weight to it, a presence that demanded respect. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sounds of the canyon fill his senses. The rustle of leaves in the wind, the distant call of a bird, the soft hum of the earth beneath his feet. It was peaceful yet powerful. Ayana remained quiet, allowing Cody the space he needed to process. After a few moments, he opened his eyes and looked at her. "I don't know if I'm ready," he admitted. Ayana nodded, her expression not one of judgment, but understanding. "None of us are ever truly ready," she said. "But the land doesn't wait for readiness. It speaks when it speaks, and you must be open to listen." Cody felt the weight of her words settle within him. He had come this far, followed this path, and he couldn't turn back now. "What do I do?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ayana stepped aside, motioning for him to stand in the center of the clearing. "You listen," she said simply. Cody took a deep breath and stepped forward, his boots crunching on the gravel. He stood still for a moment, letting the sounds of the canyon wash over him. The air seemed to grow heavier, the weight of it pressing down on him, but in a way that felt right. He closed his eyes again, focusing on the rhythm of the drums in the distance, the beat that seemed to guide him, call him forward. Then, in the silence, something changed. It wasn't a sound, not exactly. It was a feeling. A deep, resonant feeling that seemed to rise up from the earth itself. Cody felt it in his chest, in his bones. It was as if the canyon, the land, and the ancestors were speaking to him in a language older than anything he knew. The world around him felt alive in a way he had never experienced. It wasn't the kind of life he had known, filled with cattle drives and dusty trails, but a deeper, more profound life. He opened his eyes, and for the first time, he felt connected to something beyond himself. Ayana was watching him, her gaze soft but expectant. "You hear it, don't you?" she asked. Cody nodded slowly, not trusting his voice. He wasn't sure what had just happened, but he knew it had changed him. Ayana stepped forward and placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch firm yet gentle. "This is the beginning of your journey," she said. "You have taken the first step." Cody looked out across the canyon, feeling the weight of what he had just experienced. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he knew one thing for certain: he was no longer just a cowboy. He was something else, something more, and the land had shown him that. Cody stood there for a moment, the weight of Ayana's touch lingering on his shoulder. The world around him felt different now, as though he had crossed into a space where time itself moved differently. The rhythmic pulse of the drums seemed to have slowed, but their presence remained, grounding him in a way he couldn't quite explain. Ayana gave him a small nod, her expression unreadable, yet there was something in her eyes that made him feel like he had crossed an invisible threshold. He had come looking for answers, but now, standing in the heart of Apache land, he felt like the land itself had started to answer him. They walked in silence, Ayana leading the way with quiet confidence, her movements fluid and purposeful. Cody followed her, his mind racing, trying to grasp the enormity of what he had just experienced. It wasn't just the land he was starting to understand, it was the people, their culture, their deep connection to this place. The further they moved into the canyon, the more Cody felt himself slipping away from the world he had known. The air was cooler now, the narrow path winding through rocks and trees, the shadows of the canyon growing longer as the sun dipped lower in the sky. Cody didn't speak. He wasn't sure what to say. He had come here searching for something, but what he was finding was far beyond anything he had expected. As they walked, Ayana spoke softly, as though sharing a secret only the land could understand. "Our people believe that the land speaks to those who listen," she said, her voice almost a whisper against the wind. "But the land doesn't just speak in words. It speaks through the winds, through the stones, through the rivers. It speaks through us, through the choices we make and the paths we follow." Cody listened intently, his heart heavy with 1,000 unspoken questions. "How can I understand it?" he asked, his voice low. "How can I hear what the land is trying to tell me?" Ayana stopped and turned to him, her gaze sharp. "You are already listening, Cody," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "You have been listening from the moment you stepped into the canyon. The land has already chosen you. Now you must trust it." Cody felt a tightness in his chest. He wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that he was part of something larger, something that made sense of all the years he had spent alone, wandering the plains. But it was hard to let go of the life he had known, the simplicity of being a cowboy, the solitary existence he had built. Ayana didn't say anything more, but the silence between them was thick with meaning. They continued to walk, the canyon narrowing as they approached a small creek. The sound of the water rushing over the rocks filled the air, soothing and steady. Ayana knelt down at the edge of the creek, dipping her fingers into the cool water, her eyes closed for a moment as though in prayer. Cody stood back, watching her with quiet respect. He had never seen anyone so connected to the earth, so at peace with the world around them. He wanted that peace. He wanted to understand it. As Ayana stood and turned to face him, she smiled slightly. "The land will show you," she said, her eyes reflecting something deeper, something ancient. "But you must be willing to accept what it offers." Cody felt a strange weight lift from his shoulders. He had been carrying something for so long, an emptiness, a longing for something he couldn't name. Here, in the heart of the canyon, it was as though that weight was beginning to lift. The drums, still faint in the distance, seemed to guide him, pulling him forward into the unknown. Cody wasn't sure what awaited him, but he knew one thing for certain: he wasn't alone anymore. Ayana, and the land itself, had opened a door he hadn't even known existed. And now, he had no choice but to walk through it. Cody followed Ayana as they ventured deeper into the canyon, the rhythm of the drums still faint in the distance. It was as if the land itself was breathing with the heartbeat of the earth, and with every step, Cody felt more attuned to the pull of this ancient place. The air seemed thicker now, charged with something intangible. Ayana moved with purpose, her every step deliberate and sure, as if she had walked this path 1,000 times before. Cody, still trying to make sense of everything, struggled to match her pace, but he felt a deep, quiet peace settling over him. The further they walked, the more the world around him seemed to change. The shadows grew longer, and the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden glow over the canyon. It was beautiful, but it was more than that. It was alive. The canyon, the trees, the rocks, they all seemed to pulse with energy, and in that moment, Cody realized he had crossed into a world that existed beyond the one he had known. Ayana led him to a small clearing where the ground was soft, covered with moss and wildflowers. She motioned for him to sit on a large rock near the edge of a small stream that trickled through the clearing. As he sat down, he noticed how the water sparkled in the fading sunlight, its gentle flow a stark contrast to the rugged, untamed wilderness surrounding them. "This is where we come to listen," Ayana said softly, sitting down beside him. "The water speaks here." Cody looked at the stream, the water flowing peacefully over the rocks, yet he could sense there was something more to it. "What does it say?" he asked, genuinely curious. Ayana turned her gaze to the water, her eyes distant as if she were listening to something he couldn't hear. "It speaks of change," she said quietly. "Of the cycles of life, of the flow of time. It reminds us that everything has its place and its purpose." Cody thought about her words, the weight of them settling in his chest. He had always lived by the idea that time was something to be conquered, something to control. But here, in this place, it felt as if time was something to be understood, not fought against. "How do I listen?" Cody asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ayana's eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw a trace of something softer in her expression. "You listen by being still," she said. "By letting go of the noise in your mind and allowing the world around you to speak for itself." Cody took a deep breath, trying to clear his mind. He listened to the soft murmur of the stream, the rustling of the leaves in the trees, the distant call of a bird. For a moment, everything was still. The world didn't feel so large anymore, and Cody didn't feel so small. He felt like he belonged, like he was part of something that had been here long before him, and would continue long after he was gone. Ayana sat in silence beside him, her gaze fixed on the water. Cody realized that he had never truly been still, not in his heart, not in his mind. He had always been moving, always looking for something, but never stopping to listen. Now, as he sat there in the quiet, he understood why Ayana had brought him here. It wasn't about finding answers. It was about learning to be present. "What happens next?" Cody asked, his voice softer now, as if speaking louder might break the fragile peace that had settled around them. Ayana smiled, though it was small, like a secret shared only between them. "You keep listening," she said. "And you trust that the answers will come when they are meant to." Cody nodded, feeling a sense of calm wash over him. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, he felt at peace with that. The drums had stopped, but the rhythm of the land still echoed in his heart. As the sun set behind the canyon walls, Cody felt a shift within him. The journey had only just begun, but he knew now that he was exactly where he needed to be. Cody woke to the sound of the wind rustling through the canyon walls. The sun had not yet risen, but the soft glow of twilight bathed the world in a peaceful silence. Ayana was already awake, standing by the stream with her back to him, her face turned toward the sky as if listening to the whispers of the land. Cody stretched and stood, his muscles stiff from the night's rest. He had never felt so out of place and yet, so strangely at home. The night had been quiet, but his mind had not been. The questions he had asked since arriving in this land were still there, swirling in his thoughts like the river he had crossed. Yet now, they seemed less urgent. Perhaps it was the stillness of the place, or perhaps it was Ayana's calming presence. Whatever it was, he could feel a shift inside him. He moved slowly, approaching Ayana as she stood silently. "It's beautiful," he said, his voice soft, almost reverent. Ayana turned to him, her expression unreadable, but there was a warmth in her eyes. "It is," she said simply. "And it is always here, waiting for those who will." "Listen." Cody nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He had spent so much of his life running, pushing forward, trying to find answers without ever truly listening. Now, in this canyon, with Ayana at his side, he was beginning to understand that the answers were never in the past, never in the future. They were here, in the present moment, in the quiet, in the land itself. "What do we do now?" Cody asked, the uncertainty creeping into his voice. Ayana's eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw something like understanding there, something that suggested she had known all along where this path would lead him. "Now we wait," she said. "We wait for the land to show us the way." Cody didn't understand what that meant, but he didn't ask. He simply nodded and took a seat beside her by the stream, the water flowing steadily beside them. The canyon seemed to exhale around them, the sound of the earth moving beneath their feet, the rustle of the trees in the wind. They sat in silence for a long time, the only sound the soft murmur of the creek and the occasional call of a bird in the distance. As the sky lightened with the first hints of dawn, Cody felt the weight of the day ahead pressing on him. There was a part of him that still wanted to run, to leave this place behind and return to the life he knew. But another part, a deeper part, felt a strange peace here, a peace that he had never known before. Ayana had said the land would speak, but Cody wasn't sure what that meant. All he knew was that the more he sat in this quiet, the more he felt the answers he sought creeping closer, not as something to be found, but as something to be felt. The morning light spread across the canyon, casting long shadows over the rocks and trees, and for the first time since he had arrived, Cody realized that he wasn't just listening to the land, he was becoming part of it. "How do we know when it's time to move on?" Cody asked, his voice quiet. Ayana didn't immediately respond. Instead, she stood and walked toward the edge of the clearing, her eyes scanning the horizon. Cody watched her, waiting for her to speak, but she didn't. Turned back to him. The wind picked up, carrying with it the faintest sound, almost imperceptible at first. It was a low, rhythmic beat, like the sound of drums, distant but unmistakable. Ayana paused, her body still, as if she were listening for something just beyond reach. Finally, she turned to Cody. "It is time," she said. Her voice was calm, but there was an unmistakable strength in it. Cody stood, his heart racing with a mix of anticipation and uncertainty. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he knew one thing for certain. He was no longer the man who had ridden into this canyon days ago. He was different now, changed by the land, by the stillness, by the understanding he had found here. Together, they turned and walked toward the sound of the drums, ready to face whatever the land had in store for them. Cody and Ayana moved toward the sound of the drums, their steps in sync as the rhythmic beat seemed to pull them deeper into the heart of the canyon. The air felt charged, the very earth beneath their feet seemed to hum with energy, and Cody could feel the weight of every step, as though the land was guiding him, urging him forward. The canyon walls loomed around them, high and majestic, their jagged edges softened by the light of the rising sun. It was as if time itself had paused in this sacred place, and Cody was beginning to understand why Ayana had brought him here. They reached a wide, open space in the canyon, where the ground was covered in patches of soft grass and scattered stones. At the far end of the clearing, a circle of figures stood, their faces painted, their bodies draped in the traditional garb of the Apache people. The warriors stood in silence, their eyes fixed on the center of the circle, where an altar of stones had been set up. Cody's heart pounded in his chest as he realized the drums were coming from the center of the circle. Ayana stopped just behind him, and he turned to her, a question in his eyes. She gave him a small, reassuring smile, and without a word she led him forward. As they stepped into the circle, the warriors parted to make way for them, their gazes steady, watching Cody with a quiet intensity. The air felt thick with anticipation, and Cody's throat tightened as he approached the altar. He had no idea what was about to happen, but something deep inside him told him he was standing on the edge of something important. The drumbeat grew louder, its rhythm echoing in Cody's chest, matching the beat of his heart. In the center of the circle, an elder stood, his face etched with age, his eyes wise and knowing. He held a drum in his hands, the skin stretched tight, the source of the sound that had been calling them forward. Ayana stepped forward, her eyes never leaving the elder, and Cody followed her lead, standing beside her as the elder raised his hand in greeting. The elder spoke, his voice deep and steady. "You have come, Cowboy," he said, his gaze turning to Cody. "You have come to listen, to learn, to become part of this land." Cody swallowed hard, his nerves rising, but Ayana's steady presence beside him grounded him. The elder's eyes softened, and he placed the drum down on the ground, his hands resting on the top of it as he began to speak again. "The land speaks to all who are willing to hear it. It speaks of the past, the present, and the future. It speaks of our people, of our ancestors, and the paths we must walk. But it is not enough to simply listen. You must walk the path that the land lays before you. You must honor it, just as we honor the earth, the sky, and the spirit that guides us." Cody felt the weight of his words settle into his chest, the gravity of the moment sinking in. He had thought he was just following Ayana, just learning about her people, about their ways. But now, in this circle of warriors, in the presence of the elder, he realized that this was more than just a journey. It was a calling. The elder continued, his voice steady, carrying the weight of generations. "Your path is not one you walk alone. You walk with the spirits of your ancestors, with the spirit of this land, and with us. We are all connected, and it is through that connection that you will find your true purpose." Ayana stepped forward again, placing her hand on Cody's shoulder. "This is your moment," she said softly, her voice filled with quiet strength. "You must decide whether you will listen and follow, or turn away." Cody stood still, the weight of her words pressing on him, and for the first time, he felt the full weight of his journey. He had come here seeking answers, but now he understood that it was not about finding answers at all. It was about becoming part of something larger than himself, something ancient and powerful. He took a deep breath, looking around at the warriors, the elder, and Ayana, and he realized that he had already made his choice. He was ready to listen, ready to walk the path that the land had laid before him. The drums grew louder, filling the canyon with their steady beat, and Cody closed his eyes, feeling the rhythm deep within him. In that moment, he understood. This was only the beginning. Cody stood at the center of the circle, surrounded by the Apache warriors, feeling the weight of their collective gaze on him. The air was still, save for the sound of the drums beating in the distance, a steady, rhythmic pulse that seemed to match the beat of his heart. Ayana stood beside him, her presence grounding him, and the elder, who had spoken of the land's wisdom, now watched him closely, as if waiting for something. Cody's chest tightened with the realization that this moment was pivotal. He had come seeking answers, but now he understood that the answers were not something to be found, they were something to be experienced, something to be felt in the very marrow of his bones. The elder's voice broke through his thoughts. "The land does not give freely," he said, his tone steady, yet filled with a gravity that seemed to echo through the canyon. "To receive its wisdom, you must offer something in return. Not just your actions, but your heart, your spirit. The land is sacred, and it will show you what you need, but only if you are truly ready to listen, to understand." Cody nodded, his throat dry, but his mind clearer than it had ever been. Ayana's earlier words echoed in his mind. "You must walk the path the land lays before you." He understood now that walking this path meant more than just physical steps. It meant embracing the unknown, surrendering to the wisdom of a world that had existed long before him. The elder continued, "This is the way of our people, the way of the earth, the sky, and the ancestors who came before us. If you are willing to listen, the land will guide you, but you must trust in it." Cody took a deep breath, feeling the air fill his lungs, steadying his nerves. He wasn't sure exactly what he was supposed to do, but he knew he had to trust in the journey, trust in the wisdom of the land. He had spent so much of his life alone, wandering, searching for something he couldn't name. Now, surrounded by the Apache people, standing in the heart of this sacred canyon, he felt like he was finally starting to find it. The drumbeat grew louder, more insistent, filling his chest with its rhythm, its pulse. It was as if the earth itself was calling him, pulling him into its embrace. Cody closed his eyes, allowing the sound to wash over him, to become part of him. He felt the ground beneath his feet, the cool stone beneath his hands, the wind against his face. In that moment, everything seemed to align, the land, the people, the ancestors, and him. Ayana stepped forward, her hand resting gently on his arm. "It is time," she said, her voice a soft murmur. Cody opened his eyes, and for the first time since he had arrived, he felt a deep sense of clarity. He wasn't just a cowboy anymore. He was part of something greater, something ancient. He had come here searching for answers, but he realized now that the answers were not something he could find, they were something he had to become. The elder motioned for him to approach, and Cody stepped forward, his heart steady in his chest. As he knelt before the altar of stones, the warriors stepped back, forming a circle around him. The drums beat louder, their rhythm intensifying, urging him to take the next step. Cody placed his hands on the stones, feeling their cool surface, grounding himself in the moment. He closed his eyes again, allowing the land to speak to him, to show him the way forward. For a long moment, there was only silence, broken only by the rhythm of the drums and the whisper of the wind. Cody felt something stir deep within him, a shift, a knowing. He wasn't sure what it was, but it felt like the land itself had accepted him, had recognized him as part of its story. When he opened his eyes again, Ayana was standing before him, her gaze steady, filled with understanding. She didn't speak, but there was a softness in her eyes, a quiet acknowledgement of the journey they had just begun. Cody stood, his heart light, his mind clear. He had come here seeking answers, but he realized that what he had found was something more important, a connection to the land, to the people, and to himself. The drums slowed, their beat softening, and the air seemed to settle, as if the canyon itself had exhaled. Ayana gave him a small smile, and without a word, she turned and began to walk, leading him deeper into the canyon. Cody followed, no longer a stranger to this land, but a part of it. The path ahead was unknown, but for the first time, he felt ready to walk it. The journey had only just begun.